Episode 15, Chapter 14, Can You Take Me High Enough? Chapter 14, Can You Take Me High Enough?
These are all that are left, then.
Garland, the Chaos Knight, said as he looked upon the monsters arranged before him, on the roof of the Sky Palace, the highest place in the world where one could stand on solidity.
Of all the monsters who have served you, only these answered the call.
The corrupted dragons made up the largest bulk of those assembled, at the fore of the host, with their fallen queen Shiva at the head of them all. Behind the dragons, the rest were arranged in order of status. Golems of rock or mud, and reprogrammed robots of the Lefanage, equally mindless servants. Vampires, both the original breed and a more powerful wizard type, produced from the fiend's biological labs along with the animated ooze grown from samples taken in the marsh cave. Air elementals, tied to Tiamat's power, semi-living extensions of it. The Naga, dark elves, and even humans who had sought her blessing, standing at attention in straight lines. These made up the front lines, before the wild monsters who had been called in by her presence, who themselves stood before the back line, where the pitiful remnants of the forces that had belonged to the other three fiends lurked miserably. Most had died or fled from those quarters, but some few had heeded Tiamat's summons. Now, they stood with the others, awaiting the orders of the Fiend of Air and the Chaos Knight.
Indeed.
Tiamat nodded to her compatriot.
I can only hope they shall suffice. The enemy will be here soon, but I still cannot tell if they will come from above or below. As soon as I receive confirmation on either, I will deploy my forces accordingly. Very well.
Garland nodded curtly. In the past weeks, he had recovered his strength drastically, now capable of walking and talking just as well as the next undead. He had retained his mind as well, with no trace of the senility that had marked him before his death.
Then I should be leaving now. I will need to be waiting outside the temple, in case the moment comes. If you succeed, I will return, but if not...
He shrugged.
As you say.
The Fiend of Air agreed.
Is there anything else I can offer in the way of assistance? Simply do your best to distract them.
Garland instructed her.
They must remain unaware of my return until I am gone. That, along with what we discussed earlier, is all I need. Will you choose them now, then?
Tiamat inquired.
Yes.
Walking forward into the ranks, Garland approached the sentients who had been given Tiamat's blessing.
Naga, dark elves, and humans,
He stopped before one of the latter, who was garbed in grey and black armor like his comrades.
You. What is your name? Sir Carlton of Crescent Lake, sir.
The knight answered hollowly, tones deep and dead, without emotion.
And why did you seek Lady Tiamat's blessing?
Garland continued.
I was outcast by my master, the sage Calabac.
Carlton explained.
He judged me for selling condemned prisoners to the trolls of Crescent Lake, who offered them as sacrifice to carry of fire. When I asked them for help, they cast me away as well, telling me I was lucky not to become a sacrifice myself. In despair, I wandered the Yanakuram desert, until my lady found me. And if I told you that you could revenge yourself against Calabac, and all the other sages?
Garland smiled.
Revenge.
The blessed man's eyes, which had been as dead as his voice until then, now shone with a terrible eagerness.
Command and instruct me, my lord. Follow me, then.
Garland led him to the back, where he moved to the sorcerers of Marsh.
You have had interesting careers, wizards. All for the sake of revenge, against the light warriors who killed your leaders. First you offered yourself to Lich. When he died, you came to Kraken, who gave you his blessing and made you into sorcerers. And now you few who remain will even join Tiamat, fighting alongside the Dark Elves, all for some chance of slaying the light warriors.
He looked at one of them.
You. Your name? Gygas.
The sorcerer hissed through the tentacles that covered his maw.
Of us who remain, I am the highest. And the angriest.
Garland nodded.
You will join me and Carlton. In case even those assembled here fail, you will be part of the last, greatest effort to kill our foes. Thank you, Master.
Gygas joined Carlton, and the three of them moved to a large group of green-skinned women with snakes for hair.
Medusae who received Lich's blessing.
Garland looked them over.
Kept on the lowest level of the earth cave in rooms far away from your master, you were unable to reach the light warriors in time to fight them at all. A mistake on Lich's part, since you were the most powerful of his minions. Unlike the others who came from different fiends, this is your first, and last, chance to fight the light warriors. You have waited far too long. But are there any among you who would forego that, and wait even longer, in order to join me in the final plan?
He looked at one in particular, who slowly raised her hand.
Good. Your name? Miria.
She answered.
Good.
Garland indicated the other two who followed him.
Join these, Miria. And now, for the last.
He frowned, looking at the fiery red hydras.
These are all from Carrie. It seems so.
Tiamat admitted.
There were some Cerebri as well, but they panic when brought up here, so they're all down in the Mirage Tower. I apologize. No matter, I shall make do.
Garland pointed out one hydra.
This one. Slightly more intelligent, and more vicious as well. Come here, you.
Obediently, the hydra slithered forward.
You don't have a name, I take it.
The beasts' heads all shook in negation.
Fine, I'll give you one. You're Smithy. Now join the others.
The newly named Smithy followed Garland back to Tiamat with Carlton, Gygas, and Miria.
That's it, then. We'll be.
The Chaos Knight broke off, looking over the edge of the Sky Castle.
They're here. Entering the Mirage Tower.
Tiamat hissed.
Very well, no helping it. I've got mostly mindless animals down there, with some vampires and robots to keep them in line. Now, though.
She looked at her second in command.
Shiva. Go down and wait for them at the peak of the Mirage Tower. Bar their way if at all possible. As you wish.
Shiva saluted, then departed.
You're keeping the rest up here.
Garland raised an eyebrow.
Exactly.
Tiamat grinned.
They'll think those in the tower are the best I can do. Shiva will wear them down, and then they get the unpleasant surprise of meeting my real forces up here. You do seem to have things well in hand.
Garland noted.
I'm glad you're not begging me for help, as Kraken did to you. I have more pride than he did.
Tiamat shook her heads.
If I needed your help, I would be weak. I will not fail you. I am pleased by this.
The Chaos Knight slowly smiled.
Because of that, I will do what you did not ask. I'm going to help you, Tiamat.
He glanced towards her wizard vampires.
Those should have sufficient skill. Have them perform a summoning ritual. The one that is called will not only increase your chances of victory, but his return to this existence will also distract the elements even more. His return.
For once, Tiamat was caught off guard, all of her many eyes widening in shock.
You will allow me to summon the Forbidden One? The Warmech? I shall.
Garland confirmed.
Do so, immediately. We're off.
Turning from her, he reached out with one hand, and tore the sky. Where his fingers passed, the air ripped in half, sliced open into a black hole filled with stars. Without fear, he stepped through it, and after only a moment, the four he had chosen followed him through. It closed behind him, and Tiamat fell upon her forces.
Well, don't just stand there. Fill the palace. Wizard vampires, to my room. I will show you the ritual you must complete.
As she strode off towards her chamber, Tiamat felt, just for a moment, a twinge of fear at the thought of what she was about to unleash. But then she remembered who and what she was, and her dark heart was filled with glee at what the Forbidden One would do to the world she hated so much. The Yanakurum Desert was one of the harshest locales on the planet. Blazingly warm in day, bone-shattering cold at night, and filled with hostile sandworms, and yet, all these dangers paled to the intense sandstorms created by the deadly winds that eternally ravaged the desert. In its center was the only break in the endless dunes, a single golden tower that rose like a thin mountain, as high as the buildings in Lefane but shaped to a point on its top. The Mirage Tower, all that remained of the capital that had once stood there. Today, though, there was one more building, a house, only an hour's walk away from the tower. Curious, a sandworm rose from the earth and poked at the door, which promptly opened to reveal death in a sword.
It never stops.
Luke groaned as he wiped sandworm ichor off of his blade.
Let's go, fellas. Time to start the party.
Grumbling, the other three light warriors followed him. All four were wrapped in protective cloth to spare their flesh the bite of the desert winds and sands as they continued the walk they had begun weeks ago.
Stupid, stupid Tiamat!
Drake complained, as he had every day.
Would it really have been too much to ask to be able to land the Icarus in this desert? But no, there has to be sandstorms down here that would rip it apart if it came too low. We have to walk all the way here. Sometimes this job sucks. Hey, look at it this way.
Luke grunted.
Today's the day we get payback. That is something.
Drake admitted. Together, the light warriors made the last few steps of their journey to the Mirage Tower. Before the door, Luke raised the chime they had received from Halcyon in Lefane, and as it rang, the door opened of its own volition, allowing them inside. Once it closed behind them, they all discarded the heavy wrappings with relief, and looked around and up at the tower's interior. As the home of the royal family of Lefane, the Mirage Tower was grandly decorated. Ancient murals and carvings covered every surface. Walls, ceiling, even floor were etched in complex patterns, though the latter were broken and crushed from the feet of Tiamat's minions who had carelessly trampled the work of centuries. Looking up, the warriors soon saw there were very few separate rooms. Most of the tower was one huge chamber without dividing walls, only bridges and platforms between the sides that all connected to the single, vast spiral staircase running around the outside edge.
Greetings!
A voice made all four jump, and they turned to see a robot just like Sid bowing to them.
Are you the masters my series mate hoped to send? That's us, all right.
Drake confirmed.
We're here to bust Tiamat up. I see.
The robot answered.
My apologies for the rudeness, then.
Suddenly, it lunged at them with both metal-clad hands. Before it could reach, multiple lightning bolts struck it as Vlad cast a spell. Sizzling, the robot jerked around crazily, then collapsed in a pile of scrap.
Be paranoid about suspicious strangers.
Vlad noted.
Sid did warn us. Right.
Luke nodded, absently stabbing a pouncing chimera.
Let's head on up.
With Luke and Drake at the head, the light warriors advanced up the stairs. The two swordsmen mercilessly slaughtered anything in their path as they continued their inexorable advance, hacking and slashing automatically like some terrible engine of destruction. Behind them, Vlad used his spells to pick off any who struck from behind or above, while Mary kept them all intact. Howling beasts, shambling mummies, shrieking vampires like the one who had served Lich, all fell as the four heroes rose further and further into the sky.
No sign of a dragon,
Drake noted after some time.
Think she'll show? Bahamut knows what he's doing,
Mary assured him.
If he thinks she'll come out to us, she will.
Step by step, the light warriors continued upward, until finally they stood before a door and wall at the top of the stairs. Another robot by the door stood to attention as they approached.
Welcome, users. This is the teleport chamber. Transfer to the Sky Palace requires a cube. We've got one,
Luke answered, watching it warily. However, this robot didn't seem to be interested in attacking.
Excellent. Please proceed, then.
The robot saluted.
Okay.
Luke led the way into the room. It was mostly bare. In the back was a row of metal blocks covered in bright lights and strange devices. Aside from that, the only thing of note was a square metal panel in the center of the chamber.
Still nothing,
Luke growled.
Where is she? Who is she, mortals? Would it happen to be me?
A feminine voice purred from above their heads. Eyes turned upwards to see the sapphire-scaled dragon clinging to the wall above the door like a gargoyle, finely tapered head swiveling to look at them each in turn.
Welcome to the Mirage Tower. I am Shiva, and I would greet you in the name of my mistress. Your husband sends his regards,
Mary replied sadly.
And his regrets. I have nothing to say to that, or him,
Shiva stated simply.
I serve another now. That service requires your deaths. Prepare yourselves.
Straightening, she launched herself off the wall, and the light warriors scattered as the blue dragon slammed to the floor. Mary and Vlad were already chanting, but Shiva's head turned to them first.
Planning on anti-lightning? You should have done so before entering this room, fool.
Her maw opened, and a crisscrossed network of blindingly white lightning tore out, striking both mages and blasting them into the walls. As soon as she closed her mouth, Shiva whirled and met Luke's sword, which had been descending on her neck. In her claws, the former Dragon Queen held a massive hammer carved with images of a storm, and as it touched Luke's sword, electricity ran up the weapon and into the fighter.
Don't take me lightly, whelps. I was Bahamut's queen for a reason.
Shiva yelped as Luke forced her hammer down with superior strength.
Maybe, but we trained with the big guy himself,
Luke growled.
And he's the boss for even better reasons.
Growling, he continued to shove the hammer down as Drake fell from above, slashing at the Dragon Queen's face. With her free claw, she met him, but the ninja caught it with his sword even as he spun around to kick her in the eye. Howling, Shiva fell back, but even as she tumbled, she struck at Luke with her hind claws and tail. Unable to meet all three, the fighter was knocked away, and the limbs were next turned to Drake, who fell just as quickly, although neither were seriously hurt. Scrambling, Shiva regained her footing a moment before a massive fireball blew her into a wall, just as she had done to the mages who now stood behind her.
Bahamut also told us your weaknesses,
Vlad informed the charred dragon, who weakly struggled to pull herself out from the wall.
Fire. He wanted to make sure we got this job done. You've suffered too long, now it ends.
As he moved to cast the spell again, Shiva's maw snapped open.
Not that easy.
The network of lightning struck out again, electrocuting all four light warriors, but Vlad resolutely ground out the last few words of the spell, and a second fireball just as strong as the first exploded into the fallen queen. There was silence as the light warriors rose, but Shiva did not. Mary healed them, but aside from the words of her spell, all four remained silent, remembering the look on their enemy's face in her last instant alive. There hadn't been time for words, but words hadn't been needed, they all knew what the look of gratitude had meant.
"I'll call fire,"
Vlad said after the healing was completed. Pulling out the orb, he concentrated, and the element's face appeared.
"It's done. Are they ready?"
"Yes." Fire nodded.
"I'll tell Bahamut, then. Call me again in about 2 hours, and I'll tell you if it's ready for you to go on up."
"Got it." Luke nodded as he and Drake pulled Shiva's body out from the crater in the wall it occupied and moved it in front of the door.
"Well, we've got a barricade at least. Now we just sit here, hold off anything that comes down from the teleporter, and wait for the sky to catch fire."
In the back of a room of cold grey steel, lifeless and mechanical, there was a row of metal blocks covered in bright lights and strange devices. Aside from that, the only thing of note was a square metal panel in the center of the chamber. Without warning, the panel suddenly began to glow, releasing a column of light that reached to the ceiling. Then, like gods emerging from the source of all existence, 4 humans stepped from the light, each bearing an orb. A knight of Corneria, an elven ninja, and 2 wizards in white and black.
"So this is the Sky Palace?"
Luke frowned, looking around.
"Doesn't look like much from in here. Let's try going through that door before you pass judgment."
Drake suggested, opening the portal in question. Walking through, the light warriors said no more, but only stared at the sight revealed to them now. In the outer halls of the Sky Palace, the walls between them and the world were transparent and glass-like, though their true nature had to be much more durable. Through the walls, they saw the sky like never before, even from the top of the Lefinish refuge, though it was day still, darkness and stars surrounded everything. Far, far below, barely visible through the window's edge, was the blazingly bright surface of the world they called home. What truly attracted the eye, though, was the intense, insane battle in the skies. Flying towards each other, half from the Sky Palace and half towards it, thousands of winged reptiles converged. Once more, dragon would fight dragon in all-out war. At the fore of the attacking force was the dusty black mass of Bahamut, once more holding his 20-foot-long sword. All eyes were upon the Dragon King as he suddenly began to spin in place, whirling around like a tornado. As he spun, the dirt of ages flew off, flung away by the intense forces created in the movement. When he stopped in the air, Bahamut was still black and grey, but now those colors were from the skin underneath his scales, which were as transparent as the walls of the Sky Palace. And then, as the Dragon King roared his defiance, the scales began to glow, lighting up white and bright, blindingly so.
"His breath weapon!"
Drake snapped his fingers.
"All the time we trained with him, he never used his breath weapon. All dragons have one. What's his? And what's with those scales?" "The sun."
Vlad gasped in realization.
"He's absorbing power from the sun."
Now the Dragon King's form was completely illuminated by light so bright it burned the eyes even when closed, and it continued to grow even more so. And then, in an instant, it discharged in a blistering beam of absolute destruction that blazed across the sky in an instant, all the way to the Sky Palace and even through it, judging by the noise heard above them. All of the enemy that had been in the Dragon King's direct line of sight were gone, completely eradicated by the eruption of their former monarch's rage. And then, as if that were not enough, there was another blast, startlingly similar to Bahamut's, emerging from the one form in the king's companions that was not a dragon. The conspicuously different shape of the airship Icarus flew through the clouds, unleashing Lefane's own technology against the enemies who had taken everything from them. And then, as the airship's beam cannon died down, the two forces collided head-on. Dragons tore across the skies, slaying each other with devastating breath attacks and terrible weapons and, if all else failed, fangs and claws. At the center of it all was the glittering majesty of Bahamut, destroying all he saw in a terrible fury. By his side, the Icarus continued to strike its own revenge with the aid of the pirates who had returned it to the skies.
Looks like fire was right.
Mary shook her head, gripping the war hammer Shiva had wielded tightly. On an impulse, she had taken it from the dragon's claws before coming to the Sky Palace.
We won't have to worry about the dragons, at least
She, along with the others, jumped as two dragons slammed into the wall before them. After a moment of panic, they recognized the two as Huan and Razi.
So you're in, huh? Good work.
Huan congratulated them.
It's not over yet, though. We're keeping the dragons busy, but there are still plenty of other bad types in that palace to get in your way. Something else, too.
Razi cautioned.
His Majesty says there's something else going on. Something about a dark force coming to Tiamat's aid. He doesn't know exactly what it is, but thinks you should be careful. Got it.
Luke nodded.
We will. Looks like he's really getting into this. What the hell was that breath attack he used? It's called Mega Flare.
Huan explained.
He hasn't used it even once since he lost his fight with Tiamat. Now, though. Now, everything is going to be settled. Today, it all ends. Get up to the top.
Razi told them.
Tiamat's waiting. We're counting on you.
And then the two dragons were gone, backflipping away from the transparent wall and flying back into the fray. Further conversation among the light warriors was ruled out as, from the 4 hallways that connected to the space around the teleport room, monsters poured out.
Manticoras east, Chimeri west.
Drake looked around quickly.
Naga south, they look blessed. And more of that thing from the ice cave north. Eyes shut. We go north.
Luke commanded.
Worst enemies guard the way we want. Vlad, blast them out of the way. We'll keep the rest of these off your back. You got it.
Vlad nodded calmly as he faced the shrieking eyes.
This should do the trick.
A green sphere of light appeared in his hands and expanded outwards as it flew towards the eyes, pulling them into itself. Howling, the beasts vanished, and the sphere faded away.
They're gone. Let's move. What the heck was that?
Drake wondered as they ran down the hall.
Time magic.
The black wizard smirked.
Sent them to tomorrow. It's the highest level, so I can't do it many times, but the situation seemed appropriate. Just be careful with those.
Mary warned him.
Time or death magics are surely useless against Tiamat herself, but save those for when you really need them. Yes, I know.
Vlad frowned as they came up on a metal box like the ones used in the Lefinish buildings.
Do we trust this? No choice. We gotta go up.
Luke decided. Reluctantly, they piled in, and took the mechanism to the next floor. As soon as its doors opened again, Luke and Drake thrust their swords through, skewering the opponents who had been waiting.
Are these humans?
Mary frowned, examining the bodies, 2 knights in black armor.
Yeah, but they've been given the blessing.
Drake pointed out the fading specks of cloud set in their foreheads.
Some punks will volunteer for anything to be on the winning side. They got what they deserved. Let's keep going.
The warriors continued down the hall to find themselves in another intersection, this one with 8 paths.
Nobody's coming out to give us a tip-off this time, looks like. We'll just have to choose one. Righto.
Shrugging, Luke set off down a path, and the others followed. The room it led to was long and lined with various machines and tanks of bubbling liquid, and other, more gruesome things.
Some kind of laboratory.
Vlad guessed.
Those human corpses over there are being turned into undead, it looks like. Well, that ain't undead, but it's damnably familiar.
Drake yelled, pointing at several blobs of black goo that were crawling out of a tank.
Those are like the crap from the marsh cave, I'll bet. That's not all.
Mary narrowed her eyes.
There's a monitor on the tank. It says they're immune to most magic. But not fire. Right.
Vlad growled, summoning forth another massive fire blast of the kind that had decimated Shiva.
I'm certainly using that a lot lately, good thing I'm over my issues with it.
He frowned at another experiment.
Hello. This is adamantium. I didn't think there was any left. Hey, I know about that stuff.
Luke stepped up and looked at the chunk of jet black metal in question.
One of the guys at the dwarf cave told me about it when we were drinking. Said if I ever found any he'd make me a sword out of it. Looks like I can take him up on that. Why?
Drake frowned as the knight snatched up the adamantium.
It's not like you'll be able to get it to him before we face Tiamat, and that's about all that's left for us to do, right? Remember, we're all feeling like something more is up.
Luke reminded him.
Let's say I'm just being cautious. Now let's get out of here before something worse comes out to say hi.
Returning to the main chamber, they took another route, and came to a small closet with various pieces of clothing hanging.
Huh. This looks useless. No way.
Mary stepped forward eagerly.
These are all enchanted. Look at this, Vlad.
She handed him a jet black tunic.
Resistant against ice and time.
The black wizard examined it eagerly.
And responds to hostile touch with a mid-level ice spell. Very nice. One for me, too.
His sister pulled down a matching white tunic.
Responds with high-level invis spell, resistant to fire and death. And one more thing.
She handed an iridescent ribbon to Drake.
Here you go. Been too long since I had a haircut anyways.
The elf shrugged, pulling his hair back in a ponytail.
Right. Try again.
Their third choice of hallway, unfortunately, wasn't nearly as successful. It led them to a room full of huge, lumbering stone golems that took a great deal of time and effort to destroy. The fourth time was the charm, though, bringing them to another moving box and up to another floor radically different from those before it. There were no walls, and the floor was broken and winding, an unguarded network of pathways over the sky, with one misstep promising a long fall to doom.
Don't be fooled,
Vlad told the others.
It's a trick. We should be able to feel wind if this was real. Hey, yeah.
Drake brightened up.
Can't feel that at all. I think I'll be careful to stay on this path regardless.
Luke muttered. Carefully, the light warriors worked their way to a steel cube with a robot standing by it.
Greetings. Would you like to look through the great window?
The automation asked them.
This window will allow you to view the entire world, and all the magic currents active in it. Sure.
Vlad shrugged after a moment.
Why not?
Stepping up to the one portion of the block that was not complete, the black wizard looked down, then blinked.
Hey, this isn't good. Look at this.
The other three warriors joined him, and looked down over the world, seen from above. Every continent was shown in exact, if far-off detail. What had caught Vlad's attention was the vast array of colored energy stretching over it all, most notable, 4 massive streams from the corners of the world, forming an X shape. From the Earth Cave, orange. From the Gurgu volcano, blue. From the Sea Shrine, purple. And from over their heads down into the world, green. All 4, converging on their geographical center of the X shape. The Temple of Fiends, in Corneria.
Those are the colors of the fiends, not the elements.
Mary wondered.
How is this possible? I don't know, but I don't like the looks of it.
Luke growled.
We'll have to ask the elements about this once we finish Tiamat, but I think taking that adamantium was a good idea. Excuse me?
The robot asked.
Did you say you're here to slay Tiamat? Yeah.
Drake frowned, remembering the robots who had attacked them.
Is that a problem? Not at all.
The robot pulled a strange sword from its back, and the light warriors tensed for a moment before it offered the blade to Drake, hilt first.
This katana was used by the leader of the Sky Warriors. Please, take it. All right.
Drake took the sword. It was long, thin, and slightly curved.
Katana, huh? I like the feel of it. Thanks, pal. Any more help you can give us? The fourth floor is a maze.
The robot answered promptly.
Here are instructions as to the correct path.
A piece of paper came out of a slot below its eye, and Mary took it.
This is a map, all right. Thank you.
Turning, the light warriors continued across the walkway, slaying everything in their path. When they reached the next floor, and followed the robot's instructions through the maze of stone square pillars all alike, they continued to do the same. Dark elves and humans swinging deadly swords, vampires and sorcerers casting spells, lumbering stone golems and raging air elementals, all fell before the might that the light warriors now held. In the end, they rose from the maze onto the top of the Sky Palace, a massive, wide platform with nothing to see but a bridge to a floating spire with a single room attached.
That's where Tiamat will be,
Luke decided.
Looks like she's unguarded up here. Good. No, wait, there's something on the bridge.
Drake narrowed his eyes.
Too far away to see clearly, but it's coming this way. Looks mechanical. Just one sentry, though.
Luke shrugged.
Can't be worse than Shiva was, right? I don't know.
Mary frowned.
Something feels bad about that thing.
The machine in question was not humanoid like the other robots. Its main body was a dome, with tubes connected to various systems along it, and a single eye in front. The assemblage appeared to be made out of some bronze-like metal with a sickly, diseased sheen, and was carried on two sturdy legs that were now picking up speed as it saw them. And then, between one step and the next, the dark wave of its presence washed over them, as it had with the three previous fiends.
Is this Tiamat?
Luke growled.
Coming out to meet us? No.
Three voices howled in unison, as the faces of the elements suddenly appeared in the air, staring at the machine in shock.
Huh?
Drake blinked.
Thought you guys said you didn't want to come too close to the fiends. Don't talk, you fools.
Water roared.
Run. Run for your lives. Now. Do what he says.
Luke barked, and the light warriors turned, dashing back into the automatic box and heading back down to the fourth floor. As the doors closed, they saw something rising from the enemy's back, and a moment later, a series of tiny dents appeared from the other side, punched in at an insane rate.
The war mech.
Fire was muttering as the box descended.
I can't believe she summoned him. Mind telling us what this war mech is?
Drake asked tensely.
Is it as bad as Tiamat? Worse.
Earth shook his head.
The war mech is also called the Forbidden One. He was cast out of existence from a world that existed long before this one. If Tiamat's been able to call him back, well, think about that later. For now, you need to concentrate on escape. As soon as you get out, run into the maze down here. Warmech will be right behind you. You can't beat him, no matter what you do.
Fire assured them. Tone panicked.
He's immune to all forms of elemental magic, and your swords will barely be able to dent him. Your only hope is to lose him down here, then get back up and get to Tiamat before he finds you again. Enough talk. You're here.
Water bellowed.
Go.
Obeying, the light warriors rushed out of the elevator. Looking around at the startled masses of enemies, they chose an open spot and rushed it, ignoring the foes as they fled into the maze. Less than a minute after their flight, they heard the heavy metal footsteps behind them, and the discharge of high-technology weaponry, accompanied by screams.
He's slaughtering Tiamat's forces.
Mary realized grimly.
Probably just to get them out of his way. Slaughtering is right.
Drake winced, looking over his shoulder.
He just ripped a stone golem in half like it was nothing. I think making a few creative turns would be a really good idea.
He paled.
And we should do it now. He's aiming something at us.
Grabbing Mary, he jumped to the left, with Luke and Vlad only moments behind. Even so, they were nearly too late. The place where they had been standing was hit less than a second later with dozens of tiny metal shots that carved deep into the floor.
A Gatling gun.
Luke snapped his fingers.
Like the one on the Icarus. If we get hit by that thing, we've had it. Then let's not get hit by it.
Vlad suggested, diving behind another pillar, this time to their right.
Mary, think you could do something about our visibility? Just waiting until I got a moment clear to cast.
The white wizard summoned up the high-level fog spell, filling the maze with vision-concealing gas.
That should help. Let's run some more. Once we've got more distance, I can make us all invisible, and that should do it. Yeah, those footsteps are getting awfully close.
Drake and the others dodged again as more Gatling shots tore through the fog.
Gatling gun ineffective.
A cold, unemotional voice followed them.
Switching weapons modes. Activating grenade launcher. Shit.
Luke swore.
If you hear something land near you, move. I think we could have figured that out.
Drake joked weakly as a sphere of fire erupted behind them. A moment later, the elf vanished from sight.
Right. We head back towards the top once we're all invisible. I've been remembering the way.
Vlad nodded, disappearing as well.
Once this clanking monstrosity's off our backs, we can go, arg.
The next grenade had blown up right next to the mages, and both were sent flying, Mary shimmering and disappearing, while icicle skewers were launched from Vlad back at the war mech.
You okay?
Drake yelled.
We're fine, it was only glancing.
The white wizard assured him, casting the Invis 2 spell on Luke.
At least now I don't have to take the time to cast this on myself. Let's get going. Grenade launcher ineffective.
Warmech replied tonelessly.
Switching weapons modes. Activating twin cannons.
Following that, there was the sound of an explosion, and two metal spheres the size of human heads blasted past, destroying stone pillars in their path effortlessly.
How many weapons that could level a city does this thing have?
Drake demanded of the heavens as they ran.
If we had dodged left or right when it fired that one, we'd have been caught.
Luke realized.
When you hear that sound, hit the deck, they'll go overhead. That'll let it catch up to us.
Drake protested.
Then we'll have to run faster.
Vlad snapped.
One hit from those things will be instant death. Down.
The sound of the cannons was heard again, and the light warriors dived down, cannonballs flying overhead and knocking out more pillars. The ceiling began to creak and rumble dangerously.
That'll be coming down soon at this rate.
Mary warned the others.
We need to get out of here.
Jumping back to their feet, they ran for the moving box on Vlad's instructions, stopping every so often to avoid the cannon shots. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they saw the shape of the mechanism ahead.
There it is. Twin cannons ineffective.
Warmek sounded almost angry now.
Targets in danger of escaping. Preparing nuclear weapons. Oh, I don't like the sound of that.
Luke shoved the box's doors open.
Up. Let's go.
They rode the box up, relaxing ever so slightly, then froze as they heard the voice below them.
Nuclear missile ready. Screw.
Grabbing the place where the twin doors met, Luke forced them open with his bare hands, grunting at the strain.
The moment you see sky, jump out.
Without a word, the light warriors did so, and not a moment too soon, the explosion behind them blew them all forward into an undignified heap. Looking behind them, they saw that nothing at all remained of the mechanism but a hole leading down. The entire structure of it had been obliterated.
Hey, he screwed up.
Drake grinned.
Now he can't follow us up here. With everything else that thing can do? Don't bet on it.
Vlad snarled.
Across the bridge.
Luke agreed, and the light warriors dashed for it, under the still raging war in the skies between dragons. When they were halfway across the bridge, there was a heavy clank behind them that was soon repeated, and all four paled.
He did get up.
Mary glanced behind them.
Jet's on his feet. He's even faster now. Will he catch us before we get to Tiamat?
Vlad yelled.
I don't know.
Drake looked as well.
Oh no, he's got some kind of giant weapon coming out of his back.
It was a canister, open and pointed in their direction. As Warmek continued to follow them, another canister filled the larger one, this one with a pointed end aimed at them.
Nuclear missile ready.
Warmek repeated.
No.
Luke bellowed.
We were so close. Don't tell me you're giving up now.
A new, deep bass voice roared as a massive shadow covered them all, blotting out the sun. Even Warmek stared upwards in surprise as Bahamut, the Dragon King, towered over them in the skies on wings of crystal. Swooping down, he ripped the Warmek from the roof like a bird of prey.
Leave this one to me. Tiamat's yours. Go. You heard the man.
Luke agreed.
Let's move.
Finishing their run across the bridge, pausing only to let Mary cover them all with anti-lightning, they slammed the door open and went inside.
Now then, let's see how you match against me.
Bahamut bellowed at Warmek, hurling him at the side of the Sky Palace. Bouncing off, Warmek righted himself, firing the jets on his mechanical legs to hover in the air before firing the nuclear weapon. The explosion caused by it was colossal. Screaming in pain, Bahamut fell, and Warmek gave chase.
Nuclear missile effective. Preparing repeated application. You want effective?
Bahamut snarled, scales glowing.
I'll give you effective.
Maw-wide, the Dragon King launched the Mega Flare once more, straight into Warmek's front. When the beam cleared, the death machine was no longer shiny and metallic, his entire surface blackened and charred. But still he moved.
Error. Error. Enemy's offensive output equivalent to this units.
Warmek beeped.
Data impossible. Erroneous input must be destroyed. Nuclear missile ready. Damn you!
Bahamut hissed, staring his doom full in the face without fear. The nuclear weapon hissed as it prepared to fire, and Warmek's one eye glinted with triumph. Right before the airship hit.
Right-of-way violation.
Bicky howled as the Icarus slammed into the robotic enemy at full throttle, knocking it away and sending the nuclear missile spiraling harmlessly down towards the Yanakurum desert below. With a mechanical snarl, Warmek whirled around.
Activating flamethrower.
Pulling out another barrel, it began dispensing flames over the deck of the airship, and the pirates scattered, rushing below deck.
Burn my ship! Hell no!
Bicky roared, not budging from the controls and punching another button.
Moonstone cannon, fire!
The intense main beam weapon, so similar to Bicky's, blasted Warmek, charring it further, but still the death machine moved through the air.
Nuclear missile ready. Ah, crap!
Bicky's eye widened for a moment, then grinned.
Gotcha!
A 20-foot-long sword slammed into Warmek's rear, slamming him down, as Bahamut returned to the fight. Again, the nuclear missile went wild.
How long until that cannon recharges?
Bahamut yelled to the pirate.
Couple minutes.
Bicky yelled back, activating some mechanical fire extinguishers.
You thinking what I'm thinking? Oh yeah.
The Dragon King agreed, slicing at Warmek again and ignoring the waves of flame that washed over him.
This thing is getting on my last nerve. Flamethrower ineffective. Switching weapons modes.
Warmek replied just as angrily.
Activating beam saber. Nuclear missile ready. Shut up, already.
Growling, Bahamut forced the death machine's body back away from him, and the nuke fired, missing once more. More deadly, however, was the metal arm that extended with a glowing blade of pure energy on its end. Shifting his grip on Warmek to his hind claws, Bahamut struck at the enemy's beam saber with his own blade to keep it away from him.
Any time now, pirate. All right, already.
Bicky yelled.
Let em loose. About time.
Bahamut cast Warmek downwards and flew up, taking a position above the airship as its nose pointed down. Foot jets still firing, Warmek rose up to meet them, not noticing or caring as the Dragon King began to glow and the Icarus cannon energized.
Double tech!
Bicky and Bahamut screamed.
Moon flare overkill!
Not one, but two energy beams of colossal power slammed into Warmek, boring into the exact same spot on the death machine's hull. Warmek buckled and fought, then stiffened, and with the shriek of tearing metal, both beams emerged from his backside.
Nuclear missile!
The death machine moaned.
Ready!
One last missile fired straight up as Warmek fell, spiraling down and down, caught at last by gravity as its leg jets failed. The same gravity that caught the missile when it found nothing to hit, propulsion failing and dropping it down after its master. The two faded away, becoming specks in the distance, and then complete invisible. And then, finally, there was a cloud of sand blown up by a large impact, shortly followed by a fireball of truly incredible size.
Another one bites the dust.
Bicky howled.
So much for that sucker. That just leaves Tiamat.
Bahamut scowled up at the sky palace high above them.
Oh, my! Look at that!
Bicky followed his gaze.
Whoa! Didn't expect that. Still, if anybody can live through that, it'll be them.
Bahamut agreed.
Good luck, light warriors.
As soon as the light warriors stepped into Tiamat's room, the floor they stood on sprang to life, sliding them forward of its own volition. Startled at first, they quickly recovered and stood silently as it brought them to the altar and throne, both of steel, and the glowing green sphere that began to crack open even before they reached it, erupting with lightning.
So, even the Warmek failed to stop you?
The voice came from several mouths at once, eerily echoing, as multiple heads emerged from the sphere. Dragons, or at least dragon heads, 5 of them, on long, coiling necks covered with spines and horns. Writhing like a nest of serpents, the heads were followed by a bulky body even larger than Bahamut's. There were no wings, but 4 clawed limbs and a lashing tail like any other dragons, all the scales electric blue. Ceasing their thrashing, the heads all turned to glare at the light warriors, and the wave of darkness that marked the fiend's presence followed. But this time, the light warriors did not flinch even for a moment as it covered them.
Tiamat, last of the fiends.
Luke greeted her coldly.
We're here to kill you. Really? And here I thought you had come this far to sell fine leather jackets.
Tiamat hissed with amusement.
Well then, this is it. One way or another, your adventure ends today. Let me assure you, though, that the odds remain heavily in my favor despite the aid that wretch Bahamut gave you.
She sighed theatrically.
I knew I should have killed him when I had the chance. Even such as I make mistakes on occasion. Well, I hope you're not counting on him helping you anymore. Him or that fool of a pirate. My dragons will sacrifice their lives en masse if need be to keep them away from here. This is between us. Actually, I think Bahamut's busy with that clanking monstrosity out there.
Drake informed her.
You know, the freak with the nukes. Bahamut duels war mech.
Tiamat laughed.
And I thought the pirate was a fool. It seems my error will be rectified today, even Bahamut has no chance against war mech. I wonder if he will die before or after you 4. He's not dying, and neither are we.
Mary denied coldly.
You are, though, just like your siblings. That was the reason we were created. To kill you. Oh, I'm so scared.
Tiamat held up her 4 claws to hide 2 of her faces, then lowered them and grinned.
I think not. But rest assured, I will not insult you by playing mind games like the other 3. I respect your power, if nothing else. I don't think we really have anything more to say to each other, so shall we start the party? Finally, one of you freaks talks sense.
Vlad smirked.
I agree. Let's begin. Yeah.
Luke echoed, raising his sword.
Enough talk. Come on, fiend of wind. We're ready for you. Are you so sure about that?
Raising all her heads, Tiamat roared, and the room around them exploded, blasted into metal shards that blew away over the edges of the Sky Palace.
You fought the other 3 in their elements, now you shall brace me in mine. Fly.
The roaring from the fiend of air was drowned out by the surge of winds that suddenly burst into life around them, a raging cone of grey that lifted all 4 of them into the air. Screaming, the light warriors were caught up in the tornado, and Tiamat rose after them, in the storm's center.
You have got to be kidding me!
Drake yelled.
This has to violate some sort of rule. I make the rules in the air, little elf. You chose to challenge me in my domain. Now pay the price.
Shrieking in triumph, Tiamat slashed at Drake with her 4 claws. The first hit struck home, but the second was deflected with the elf's new katana, cutting open Tiamat's wrist.
Not too different from what Kraken pulled.
Drake grinned at her as his 3 companions attacked as well.
This is a pain, but we can still fight back.
Spinning wildly, the light warriors nevertheless attacked with blade and spell.
Perhaps, but could Kraken do this?
Flattening her main body, Tiamat lunged out with her heads, 1 to each of the light warriors while the 5th raised upright to watch. Snapping and snarling, the dragon heads attacked with massive fangs, and were met with cold steel.
Don't let your guards down.
Luke turned his head to glare at the others.
She's got to have more than this.
As he looked back, he saw the head he was facing grin before belching green smoke.
Indeed she does.
Tiamat laughed as her other heads simultaneously unleashed their own breath weapons. That which faced Drake exhaled clouds of frost. The head confronting Vlad spewed a constant stream of fire. And from the head attacking Mary, lightning raged.
Cripes!
Luke stared at the approaching cloud of green gas.
That's the stuff those gas dragons used. Vlad! Blast me with something easy. Blast you!
The Black Wizard stared at Luke, then saw the gas.
Oh! Yes, dodging that would be good. I have a better idea, though.
A fireball ignited the cloud, singing both Luke and the dragon head that had spewed the gas. Smiling, Vlad turned back to his head.
And by the way, fiend, fire doesn't faze me anymore.
Proving the words, he charged into the next fire blast and created a 20-foot sword of ice that slammed into the enemy's face. Though it broke apart into shards, Tiamat still screamed.
Way to go, guys!
Drake grinned as he and Mary fought back with their own weapons.
Hey, thanks!
Luke charged ahead and slammed the enemy with a broad swing that removed 2 feet of her snout. Howling and trailing green energy, the head reared back, and the knight turned back to Vlad.
Hey, I got an idea! Trade! Sounds effective. Let's do it.
This time, the Black Wizard did hit Luke with a minor fire blast, adjusting his flight path through the whirling winds so that he came to the ice head. At the same time, Vlad blasted himself to the poison gas head.
Come on, fiend! Hit me with that gas! I think not.
Tiamat began whirling around, even faster than the tornado.
I can change positions too. And more.
All 4 horizontal heads began spewing their breath weapons, the elements combining into a circular wave of magic that washed over all 4 warriors equally. Mary swore mildly under her breath and began healing them instantly, Luke following suit. Before they finished, though, the heads stopped again, locking into place. The one with the shortened snout now faced Mary.
Ha ha ha! Let's see you taste the poison, healer!
As the maw gaped, Mary's hand whipped around to her back and returned bearing a staff.
Gladly!
The White Wizard focused her will through the artifact from the sea shrine, and flames were born into the enemy's maw even as the gas rushed from her throat. The explosion, taking place inside Tiamat's own mouth, had the obvious result, and one dragon neck hung limp and headless, dripping green glow.
One down!
Drake cheered, combating the lightning head with his katana.
Let's keep it up, fellas! Wretch!
Tiamat snarled, bringing the 5th head down on Mary. This one, when its maw opened, struck with a blast of wind, and the White Wizard buckled.
Damn!
Luke saw what was happening, and charged his head, ignoring the fire blast meeting him.
Vlad! Blast me at Mary when I say now!
The White Wizard was currently to his left, and her brother to his right.
All right!
Vlad growled.
Just let me take this thing out for a moment.
Freezing ice covered him, and the Black Wizard buckled, but finished his own spell nonetheless, and as grey light covered it, the head froze in surprise.
What the hell?
Tiamat's other 3 heads screamed.
What did you do? Can't feel it? Not surprising, that one's frozen in time.
Vlad explained.
It'll break free before long, but this frees me up for a moment. Luke. Now.
Taking advantage of Tiamat's distraction, the knight rammed his sword into one nostril, hooking the fiend of air like a fish.
Right.
Vlad hit him with a stronger spell this time, and both knight and head were borne towards the White Wizard. And the head she was facing. With a sick crack, the 2 heads slammed together, and Luke pulled his sword free.
I'll keep them off you!
He yelled to the heavily wounded White Wizard.
Heal everybody, we're still in trouble from that multi-element wave. You boast, whelp.
Tiamat growled. Both heads breathed together, striking the night with flame and wind, and he grunted in pain, but held together, slapping at them with his sword.
I'm also tough.
Luke grinned fearlessly.
Hit me with everything you've got, it still won't be enough.
Beyond, he saw both Drake and Vlad still dueling with their heads.
Keep it up, guys. Help's on the way. So I see.
Drake grinned, renewing his assault as he was healed of all injuries.
Thanks, Mary. Excellent.
Vlad echoed as he too was healed.
Pity you can't do that, monstrosity. No, but I can put you right back in the same shape you were before.
Tiamat whirled around, releasing her multi-elemental wave again, this time with the bone-breaking winds replacing the acid gas. When she stopped, the four warriors were separate once more, and heavily hurt again.
We can keep this up all day.
Now Mary was subjected to ice, Vlad to air, Drake to fire, and Luke to lightning.
Yes.
The knight charged into the attack as soon as he saw what it was, and continued forward as it struck, completely unfazed. Tiamat could only stare as his blade whirled around in a massive, two-handed strike that chopped halfway through her neck in one blow.
No. How? Anti-lit, before the fight started.
Luke brought his arms back for another strike, ignoring repeated strikes of lightning.
That, plus my natural toughness, makes for one attack I can take without pausing even for a moment.
The blade whirled again, and the head flew, decapitated.
3 to go. Vlad, blast Drake to Mary and me to that head. Mary, heal us. Drake, keep that one off her so she can. Right.
All three warriors yelled in unison, following the orders without pause.
Damn you all!
Tiamat screamed in frustration, striking at Vlad with wind and Drake with fire. Most enraged of all, however, was the ice head, which lunged at Mary with fangs even as it spewed the cold, sinking its teeth into her shoulder as Drake approached.
Ha ha! Just try and get me away from her, elf. She can handle that herself.
Drake narrowed his eyes.
Right, Mary. Right.
Mary agreed. Despite her pain, the hammer she now held was brought around to slam into Tiamat's throat, unleashing a wave of electricity along with the force of impact.
Shiva's hammer.
Choking, Tiamat was forced to release, and Drake pulled Mary away, substituting his blade. Freed, the White Wizard began to heal them all once more.
As you said, lady.
Luke assaulted the fire head, already partially thrashed from previous attacks of both his and Drake's swords as well as Vlad's magic.
We can keep this up all day. Can you now?
Tiamat roared.
Even if I do this?
The tornado around them suddenly changed its intensity, flinging the other three light warriors away while drawing Luke closer. Shrieking triumphantly, the Fiend of Air turned all three of her remaining heads to the knight.
The others all made mistakes, singling out those who held their orbs. The one to kill first should have been the leader. Without you to direct them, those three have no hope. I don't think so.
Luke grunted, absorbing all three elemental strikes as he continued chopping at the fire head, the most heavily damaged of the three.
They're stronger than you give them credit for. Than any of you ever did, or ever will. That's why I count on them. Like now.
Grey light struck the head of Air, freezing it in time, and a wave of fire hit the ice head, two medium-level fire spells combined into one much stronger.
Did you think you could get rid of us that easy?
Drake yelled, speaking for the other two as well.
Spells can be used from a distance, even if weapons can't. Told you so.
Freed for the moment from the other two, Luke bore down on the nearly dead fire head and completed the job with an overhead chop.
Right then. That should be enough for me to take this out.
Reaching into his pack, he pulled out the orb of air.
Oh, no you don't.
The airhead broke free of the spell, and both recoiled, dragging the main body with them. Grimly, Luke followed, then froze as the tornado that held them up suddenly disappeared. Tiamat remained hovering in the air, but the 4 light warriors fell, suddenly returned to gravity's embrace. Bleeding green light from dozens of wounds, the remaining 2 heads of the Fiend of Air leered down at the light warriors.
Ha ha ha! Die! Fall, and perish! It's up to you now!
Vlad yelled at Luke as he and the other 2 all focused their wills.
Finish it! We're counting on you!
Mary echoed.
Kick her ass!
Drake cheered, as his and Vlad's natural black magic combined with that summoned from Mary's hammer. On a rising wave of fire, ice, and lighting, Luke was pushed back up towards the Fiend of Air, sword in one hand and orb in the other.
So, you fight to the end?
The ice head snarled, as the airhead worked at something on the deceased fire head.
I guessed you would. Come, then.
Now Luke could see what she did, gnawing. The airhead was chewing off the fire head, leaving the neck as bare as the other 2 stumps.
What the hell are you doing?
The knight demanded.
Freeing the path.
Tiamat's fangs pulled back, stained with the green glow that was her own life's blood. 2 heads and 3 necks flattened out and whirled around, and the multi-elemental storm was unleashed once more. Even without the heads, the neck stumps now surged out waves of their attacks.
Die! You fight to the end too, I see.
Luke grunted, pain washing over him. Burning, freezing, shocking, melting, crushing. But still he rose.
Good spirit. But still, not as strong as ours. I will not stop. I will not fall. I am strong, and so is the will of my friends.
As the ice head passed him, his sword ripped it off, and the frost in the storm paused. Forcing through the intense pain that covered him, the knight rose past the final head, flipped, and landed on Tiamat's back. Gripping his sword, he plunged it down into the fiend. Scales, flesh, and the green power beneath were all torn through. And Tiamat screamed.
Get off!
Turning, the last head savaged him with its fangs, but Luke continued to stab, deeper and deeper, widening the wound with every thrust.
Give up! No!
The knight roared.
I will not!
Reaching into the bleeding, gaping hole with his free hand, he shoved the orb of air inside, then began to slam it down with his sword like a hammer. Tiamat screamed again, this time an unending, constant shriek, as golden energy filled her, wilting her other 4 necks and dropping them off like dead wood from a tree. Her remaining flesh blackened, the golden light shining from it even brighter, as the airship Icarus rose from below, the other 3 light warriors all standing on its deck, along with the pirates. Jumping from Tiamat's back, Luke landed on the ship as well, then turned to face his fallen foe.
Good fight! I'll give you that. But in the end, you lose, Tiamat. It's over. Over.
The dying Fiend of Air hissed.
Ha ha ha. How sadly you are mistaken, my brave champions. Congratulations are indeed in order for your victory on this day. But it is only temporary. You have defeated us all, but our counterattack has already been set into motion. Enjoy a brief reprieve, but don't expect it to last. Prepare yourselves, for within days, we shall return. Bullshit!
Drake yelled.
We know how it works. The elements are here now. You can't just chuck them aside. If you don't believe me, wait and see.
Tiamat shrugged, indifferent.
It matters not. Regardless of your belief, we will be back. And with us, we bring the end of the world. I shall see you again soon. Until then.
Shrieking with laughter, the fiend of air evaporated, leaving only the glowing yellow orb that fell into Luke's hands.
Take us back to the roof, Bicky.
The knight ordered as Mary healed the horrible wounds that covered him.
One last thing to do. Ah, right.
For once, Bicky obeyed without comment, dropping the 4 light warriors off at the altar and throne. Placing the orb of air on the altar, Luke sighed.
It is done. The fiend of air is dead. Let the air be returned.
White light, bright and pure, filled the sky. When it faded, a noble, proud-looking lady with silver hair stood before them in a golden dress. Luke bowed deeply to her.
The element of air, I presume. Yes. Well done, Sir Luke. And all of you as well.
Air smiled for a moment, then let it disappear.
Unfortunately, we have little time for joy. I am sorry, but you and Captain Bicky must leave here at once. It's not over, is it?
Luke frowned as well.
I was afraid of that. Indeed.
Air turned to the Icarus.
I will increase the speed of this noble machine while you rest and recover aboard it, and I confer with my siblings. With the full force of air speeding its flight, you should be back at Crescent Lake within days, and we shall confer with the sages there. Something is terribly wrong. You feel it too, milady.
Bahamut landed next to them.
I suspected it as well. Tiamat could not have called that abomination Warmech by herself. Indeed.
Air nodded to the Dragon King.
We must go, and we must go now. All right.
Luke agreed, climbing back aboard the airship along with the other 3.
Let's get some rest, guys. I think we're going to need it.
End of chapter.